He's like the dentist Kennedy. It never really takes as long as he says. 5, 4. Hey
I
everybody,
know
we're
it's
here. Right, the dentist says start counting back or 10, or when you go and you're like 10, 9. Whoop, 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 whoop. So anyway, we are very fortunate today to have from the St. Rose office the bundle of energy known as Kennedy Weinberg. Welcome to the show. All right, we are very fortunate. We know that we know somebody related to you, your father Mark, who is one of our dynamite, awesome agents. And I know that you must have some of that hustle gene built right into you, don't you, Kennedy?
Oh yeah, to say the least, definitely. I mean, like I've mentioned before to a lot of people, I grew up around real estate, at 7 years old, going on showing appointments if I had to with my dad. And my mom was a lender for 24, 26 years. So it's just embedded into me at this point.
Yes. And then you went to what school you go to? I can't off the top of my head. I can't remember because I remember you graduated not too long ago too, right?
So good question. So I attended Northern Arizona at 17 years old. My parents had to sign off for me to go to college. And I graduated in undergrad in 3 years, then decided to go farther and go to grad school. So I got my master's from Arizona State in forensic psychology in 1 year. So I condensed undergrad and grad school into a 4 year program. It obviously was a different path. As you can see, I did not end up going that direction, but it was the education factor taught me a lot more than just the schooling. It was discipline, time efficiency, and many other things. So,
Yeah, and I'm assuming that forensic psychology is a lot more difficult. It probably helps you completely deal with your clients and qualifying people, and it doesn't hurt.
yeah, no, it has been actually probably my strong suit in all of this is because I'm able to read the client and ask them the right questions. Like you can tell by body language if they're hesitant on something, what are they hesitant about? Let's talk about it. Let's work through it so we can move forward. We can't move forward if there's still things going on in their head, right? So
Mhm.
that's been a huge asset for me as a realtor, definitely.
Right. Yeah, and all that schooling is great, especially a dynamite school that you went to. Right. So very good schools. Yeah. And all right. So you grew up in this business. All right. And then you went to college, and then you came back to it. You know, when you were younger, watching it versus practicing it, is there anything that jumps out you that you thought is way different than you thought it would be?
That's a good question because I was thinking about that the other day. I was young, so you don't think too much into things. You're excited. You get to go look at new houses and you get to run around with dad, right? That's how you look at it.
Mhm.
Um, Something that I definitely underestimated was how much goes into a transaction from point A to point Z to get it to the finish line. I think a lot of people who aren't realtors underestimate that as well. What we have to deal with, what's in our control, and so many things that are out of our control, which which is a lot. There's a lot of things realtors don't actually control too, right? There's many other hands in the pot to get it to the finish line. And that was probably for me the biggest eye opener as well.
Mm.
We're the transaction a lot of times, but there's a lot more involved.
Isn't it funny too that that your friends, your family, people that aren't in real estate, they think, oh, well, anybody can do that. It's such an easy job, isn't it? And it's really not as easy as people put. Because a lot of people get into real estate, but not a lot of people stick and end up making it even up to the third, fourth, or fifth year. Which you're well into. What, you're 2 years in now, right?
This is like full time. So kind of background on that is after college, obviously, I went into the field of psychology of some sort, realized it really wasn't for me. So I actually got an opportunity to recruit for startup tech companies. So I was heavily involved in tech. Um, and that was global. It was India, Germany. I was dealing a lot with the Bay Area and, starting from scratch basically. And, um, moving on into that, I decided that it wasn't for me and kind of got into, real estate has always been something that we've thought about, my dad's like, try to go your own path and then we'll dive back into it and see where you're at then, right? So at some point, I told dad, I go, Dad, I I'm good at recruiting, but I don't love it. And so I actually made the decision of going into real estate school while I was still working my other job. I already own a home. So I've owned a home now for over 2 years. And so I bought one at 22 or 23 years old, just turned
Good for you.
25. I own my own home, so I had to be careful. There's obviously a lot of bills involved. So I had to make the transition wisely. So I started real estate school, and what was funny is my bosses at the time were living in Thailand. So 5 o'clock is when my day started, and 5 o'clock at night was when real estate school started. So I was in there. The poor teachers are probably like, this girl's on her laptop. I was trying to just multitask, get the job done, keep my other job in line so that I can make the transition as appropriately. So long story short, I really full time transitioned in April of this year, but have had my license, yeah, for just under 2 years.
Good for you. Good for you. Yeah, it sounds, by the way you're talking, it sounds like you have that entrepreneurial gene, whatever you want to call it, that you enjoy, because the thing about real estate is good day, bad day, indifferent. You get paid what you believe you're worth, and the only vote that matters is yours. And I'm sure you've seen your father do that year after year after year, and he just keeps knocking it out of the park, which is great. So it's a good example to have around for sure.
Definitely, yeah. Dad's it's really nice to have him. And I know I'm very fortunate in that way. That's a huge asset right there for myself. I'm sure at this point my calls are out of the park for him. I'm sure there's times where he ignores me on purpose, rightfully so, because there's a lot of questions. You know,
Right.
I I'm definitely very analytical, right? So I look into everything. I always want to do a very good job. For me, this industry, yes, you're your own CEO, and obviously everyone wants to get paid. That's a no-brainer. But to me, I'm not happy unless my client is happy, so the money comes after that. So
Yeah.
my stress is at night when I'm thinking about a transaction or not. This needs to close so I get paid. It's this needs to close because my buyer has money on the line. My seller has, money on the line, way bigger than me.
Yeah, no, I can feel that. And that's the most important thing. And when you have that, like you said earlier, if you can have something that you can strive for, that you can get, your meaning. Because let's face it, being in real estate, to me, like when I started young too. I got my license at 19. I've been doing this for 39 years. Hello, for a little while now, and I've been in it this long because ultimately you're your own boss, but the people you help, right, is what's most important. And now I enjoy helping people get it themselves. I can't tell
Mm,
you how many people I've coached that never made 100,000 or 200,000 or 300, and now they do that. And I like people helping people get it. But when I was in real estate, I totally understand it's a responsibility. It's the American dream. It's their number one asset. And so awesome that you bought your first house at 22. I mean, it's a very important thing that you have to do an incredible job on. And if you do that job, all right, not only is it the golden rule, not only is your fiduciary responsibility, but it also will help you in future business and also help your clients and customers, which is the by far the most important thing. I think people don't take that fiduciary responsibility important enough, but it sounds like you do. So good for you.
thank you. Yeah. I definitely would say I do. I strive to.
Yeah.
That's number
Now
one
I have
to me.
one important question for you, and your father may or may not be watching. So it's very important. Cubs or White Sox?
Oh gosh, you'll ask dad. I was 8 years old and I almost got into a fight in the stands with a White Sox fan. So absolutely the Cubbies.
Oh, okay.
No
All right. Good.
doubt.
Just making sure. And
Yeah.
we're still, yeah, and the Blackhawks and all that, and the Bulls and all that goes. I get you. Okay, good. Just making sure I had the right Weinberg here. That's all.
Oh yeah. We don't play around with those. Those are enemies.
Yeah, I hear you. No, whenever, because I love sports, and whenever I was prospecting, and someone would say I'm from Chicago, that was always my first question. Cubs or White Sox, or if I'm from New York, okay, are you the Mets or are you the Yankees or Red Sox? From Boston because we're small. It's easy. Red Sox, Bruins, Patriots.
I don't know if Dad told you, but we went to Boston when I was I in high school? I want to say I was in high school or early years of undergrad. And we went to Boston and we went to Fenway. He had a client, actually, believe it or not, that had some in with the ballpark. So we got great seats and we got to enjoy a really good game. And honestly, Dad may talk to me later about this, but Fenway may be nicer than Wrigley. They're both amazing old school parks, but there's something about Fenway. I love it. I know Dad can admit it's a great park too.
Yeah, I've been to Wrigley twice too, and when I was sitting there going, "Hey, they have stands on the house across the street. This is
Yeah.
amazing."
Hmm.
No, Wrigley and Fenway are experiences that anybody in sports, especially in baseball, should experience because not only is it the park itself, but it's also the people. I mean, they are diehard Cubs fans or Red Sox fans. It's like no, I mean the Yankees probably have it too, and there's a few others, but it's like no other place when you go to one of those stadiums, which is great.
Right.
All right, so now we knew you were analytical just by you said I'm analytical. I'm like I know because and somebody analytical picks forensic psychology, not somebody who's an expressive personality picks that. So what made you pick that for college? Just curious. I know you're an analytical mind, but what about it? You said to yourself, I got to do this.
That's a good question. Because when I was an undergrad, you probably can attest that a lot of your friends and your peers around you changed their major multiple times. I actually went in and I kept it the whole way through, even past obviously undergrad into grad school. And then once I got into the field, I realized I was too empathetic and I was taking work home with me. Not saying I don't take my work home with me now. I'm working around the clock still, but it's different. It's very different. It's it takes some of the naivety out of you. And I was young. I was 21 when I 21, 22 when I jumped into it, and it was just a little too much, a little too fast. And at that age, I don't think you're ready to see what really comes with psychology and being in that field.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be really scary, I would imagine, especially some of the
Yeah.
stories and things you're hearing with and dealing with and people getting through and so
Mhm.
forth. Real estate transactions can be bad, but they're not that bad. Plus, real estate, especially for the analytical mind, real estate has a beginning. You start with them. It has an end, meaning a closing, and then you can work with them several times over and so forth. So it's I think it's very good from an analytical standpoint that it has a beginning, has an end. It's like a contract has a beginning, has an end, has a performance inside it, and you have certain steps you have to follow. So I'm assuming that part of it has to be very rewarding for you.
Yes. And to answer your question, basically why I got into it, I don't know if I have an answer, to be honest. I loved watching. I knew I wanted to be a detective at one point when I was a kid. I loved watching CSI Miami with Dad when I was younger. Um, and so I knew that I just enjoyed that. So and I always analyzed people since I was younger. I've always just looked at the bigger picture and read between the lines when it came to people. I think that's why, even in my personal life with friendships, I've been able to maintain them so well, is because I can understand the person. Even if they're saying one thing, I know it goes deeper than that. And as especially, you got to read between the lines. So I think I do a good job at that. And so it felt like it maybe was destined for me to go that route, but obviously it was shown that it was not.
No, but it was incredible training for your current job, right?
Yeah.
And the great thing, remember the great that when I remember sitting in college my second year in accounting, and the teacher came out and said, "Okay, you graduate from this college with a 4-year degree. Here's what you can make on average." And I know it's not just about money, but like you said, that's kind of important. Money's kind of the measuring stick. How am I doing? Well, right, and your clients and your customers. But I remember saying, I already made that my first year in real estate part time while I was going to school. So I think I like this job, and it's never let me down since. And even with all the craziness and the changes and the disruptors, the business is still ultimately the same. If you're good with dealing with people, if you're good with communicating, you have empathy. It sounds like you definitely do. You can do incredibly well in this business. And every year you can give yourself a pay increase too, because you get better at it, you get more efficient, you get more effective. And like we said, your father's a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I think about my first ever transaction versus like what I have going on now, and it's actually day and night. That's why. And one thing I think honestly, I give some credit to my parents too. Is I was never scared to jump into it. I know a lot of new agents are fear jumping into the industry, right? There's so much we don't know. There's so many what ifs, and you kind of just have to take it for for what it is and when it comes to you, because every transaction is very different from the other.
They really are, and that's what makes it exciting, I think, too, because ultimately the goal is the same, but you have, and it really has to do with your flexibility and versatility as a person too, because I think it make you grow. I know for me, I was not good at listening at first, really not good at it, and so I took NLP courses just to become better at listening and communicating, like actually asking a question, letting them answer. That was like a huge breakthrough for me. Writing it down, all right, and then actually following through. So we have strengths, we have weaknesses, and if we can work, but ultimately the game itself of real estate makes you better, especially if you become a student, which it sounds like you've definitely done. So speaking of being a student, okay, what do you think? In this business, to be successful, you've had your mother and your father as examples of being in real estate from early on, and now yourself for a few years. What do you think the top three things? I want to be great at real estate. What would you say that they are?
That's a great question. Kind of what I mentioned, I would say to be great, don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no bad question. I know Carlos and Amanda and my dad and my mom have heard enough of me, but they're always so great and they answer all my questions. And I attest some of my success to them because without the questions being asked, I could have made the wrong decision. I mean, I we're blessed too at Berkshire to have Darren. I've definitely called Darren on multiple occasions, and he's patted me on the back for those phone calls because he goes, it's a good thing you called. This is a great example. You need to do this. This is how to make sure you don't have something come back on you or your client. And that's huge for the client too. We have protection. They don't, smaller brokerages don't always have that or at all. So that right there is huge for us. Another thing is don't fear any transaction. There's some that'll come to you and you'll be like, oh, this one might be tough. You're got a client who's going through a divorce, or you got a hoarder house, or you got a house that looks very beat up. there's always there's always a buyer on the other end for those houses. You have to have the confidence in that as well. And you know your marketing tools become important with that as well. And then I would say my last one is to be successful, enjoy the journey, not the destination. I think a lot of times especially myself, I've always had such big goals, such big aspirations, and I've wanted to jump from A to Z so quickly. And that's just not how life works. And I had to learn that. So enjoy the long nights and the early mornings and the hustle and 3 cups of coffee a day. And enjoy that because one day you'll get situated in your business and you'll, like Dad does with me. He talks about all the memories. Kennedy, at one point I had 13 listings, and every phone call I'd have to, oh, I'm driving this, driving that. And so now to hear those, like, he had fun with the journey. Now he's made a lot of good rapport with clients. They're returning clients. He's built a foundation for himself after 30 years, right? So I'm trying to learn, and I want to teach others, enjoy that. Don't worry about getting to the finish line, making that the big bucks. You're going to get there if you do all the right things and all the right steps.
Right. That's such wisdom, especially from a young lady like yourself. That's great. And by the way, I just want you to know I did talk to Carlos and Amanda before I did this call, and they both had nothing but wonderful things to say about you. That's where I came up with the energy, spark plug, because they say you are full of energy, positive. And let me tell you something too. The only thing worse than asking a lot of questions, because I'm going to tell you, I've been in management now for, in real estate for over 10 years. I've been in real estate sales since 1985. I've been a coach for 26 years. The only thing worse than not asking, than asking a lot of questions is asking none. You asking a lot of questions is the best thing. I should put it that way. Asking a lot of questions is the best thing that you can do because it means you care. You're trying to get better. I coach people that never come to the call with questions. I coach some that start on with, like Rochelle Vanoy in your own office. When I have a coaching call with her, She has questions, she has scenarios, she has role plays, she has situations. Boom. And she's a very, I mean, she sells, between 40 and 50 homes every single year, like your father, every single year, consistently over and over. Questions, questions. So when you have questions, I would say never stop having questions.
Yeah.
Listen to a lot of great books, read a lot of great stuff. But you said something that's so critical that took me a long time to understand. You have to, you're young, enjoy the journey. You don't want to be at the retirement age and be an old man like me and your father are right now. You want to have as much, and we're not old, by the way. I just say that jokingly. You want to enjoy this as much as possible, because every memory you're gonna remember them, just like your dad does, just like I do. I could tell you deals I did back here, and everyone is different, everybody's special. You're going to remember them all. You're going to have a blast, continue to do an incredible job, and the business will just keep coming in over and over.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. It definitely, I agree.
All right. Did I forget to ask you a question that you'd like to answer?
No, I think I've talked your ear quite a bit already.
No, you said some great stuff too, Kennedy. We enjoy having you here at the company. Obviously, you're a dynamite, like we said, positive energy spark plug. So keep doing that. Like the ever energy, what's that? Energy bunny, ever ready energy. The one that slaps the cymbals. You can be that person all day, every day, and everybody will enjoy every minute of it. So really appreciate you taking your time out today. Keep rocking. If I can ever help, let me know. I'm always here too.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for doing this today. Appreciate it.
Have a good one.
Talk soon. Okay. Bye bye.